What a wonderful day that the Lord has given us yet again. I don't know about y'all, but I mowed my field yesterday, and it was about 4.5 hours of heat and intense sunlight. I did it kind of a strange way. I wore no shoes on my zero turn and burned the very tops of my feet. I would show you, but yeah, tops of, yeah. Dad usually takes care of it for me during the week while I'm at work, and I know this week I needed to step up and mow my own grass. And yeah, look what happened. I burned the top of my feet pretty bad. Tops of these feet hadn't seen sunlight in over a year, So I got taught a very valuable lesson: wear shoes and pants and everything. My knee. Today's lesson, we're just kind of continuing going through our lesson here from Answers in Genesis. This is probably one of, if not the most important lesson of the year. Ta-da! Anybody know why? Is anybody following along? We're on lesson 126 for those of you who have your own books. This lesson is about the birth of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Was there ever so much more a wonderful day than this day? Than this occasion, this story we're going to be discussing today? Had Jesus not came humbly in the form of a baby to this earth to be both God and man, to carry the weight and burden of all creation's sin, you and I, would probably not be sitting in this church today. There's one. 2, we would have no hope. No hope from this life or the next one. Think about that. People outside of Christianity, I always find very interesting when I'm talking or ministering to people who are non-believers, that there just seems to be a lack of hope. The world would call it pessimistic, right? These people just can't see the good in, the situation. But the truth is, without Jesus, without that hope, everything is lost. It truly is. If we do not have that hope for salvation, what is this life worth? I had a buddy of mine who routinely asked me, what is the meaning to this life? You want to talk about a deep theological question to ask somebody, right? Is anybody in this room ready to answer that question for a non-believer? What is the purpose to this life? You think you can answer that question? To serve the Lord Jesus Christ. That's definitely a purpose. Bring more people to the kingdom. That's the Great Commission you're talking about there. But is that the purpose of life? Why did God create this universe?
Why did God create us?
Why did God create anything?
To worship Him.
Okay. So everything was made to God's glory.
Yes.
Right? What's the purpose behind that? What's the reason? Why? Why did He decide to do that? Because He loves His children? But why did He do that? See, what I'm getting around to this is the fact that there always comes this question. Why? Why did God create the universe? Why did He want to be worshipped? Why did He He wanted a family. That's actually one of the best answers I've ever heard. God wanted to know that something loved Him for Him. That's what He wanted. That's the why. Because how can you ever know if things are made to do what you want them to do? How can you know? Can you ever truly know? You can't. There's this thing with my kids, right? And I'm sure all the other fathers and parents in this room can admit to this. How difficult is it to get your kids to do what you tell them to do the first time? It's impossible. And why is that exactly? Why? These kids know they are raised by you. They know that you provide for every means of their life. The power that powers their favorite devices. The air conditioning that they enjoy every single day when it's 97 degrees outside. The gas to get them wherever they go. The money that buys all of the toys and clothes. They know for a fact you provide every bit of that. Rebellious by nature.
Yeah, they want to push their boundaries.
That's right. Free will. The fact of the matter is, they can choose to disobey you. Who gave them that? Who gave them that ability?
God.
God did. Because how could you know your kids love you if they didn't have the option to not? And that is the purpose of life, at least in my opinion. Yes, absolutely. The exact same thing. And who knows why? Right. The truth of this, and the point that I'm driving home to today, He is a good Father. He is the example for every one of us fathers. And thank God that we have that example. I know that I am not perfect, believe it or not. Right, Matt? Yeah? I am not perfect, but I try very hard. I know I'm never going to be at God's level. I'm well aware of my limitations. But I have that example, and then I even have a better example in my own father. My father who has raised me and shown me the path and guided me down this path towards God and towards the greatest example we can follow. And all of that started when Jesus was born, for you and for me. Now, God created the universe with this all in a plan long before, but the purpose of it was so that we would love Him for Him. And so Jesus' birth was the inaction of that plan to bring Himself to earth, born humbly in a manger, and then die on a cross so that we all may live. Simple as that. And it's all because your Father loved you. That's it. Absolutely. So, in today's lesson, we're going to be looking at a couple of different scriptures. Most of this you should all know by heart, and shame on you for being at church if you don't know it by heart. But this is going to be, we're going to be starting in Luke chapter 2, verse 1, and it goes through 20. I'm going to kind of run through these things pretty quickly because, like I said, it's a story we all know. Verses 1 through verses 6 and 7 is basically here's what's happening at the time, right? The Roman Empire is ruling. There is certain kings and things are happening in other parts of the world. Why is it important that the author here gives us kind of this information? It's to place it in a historical context about when and what was going on so that people can look back in history and verify those things with the other events that he is saying are happening at the same time. Fast forward to verse 8. And at the night where the shepherds were staying in the fields nearby, guarding their flock of sheep, and then suddenly, what happened? Angels! We have heard all night. Y'all remember that? That's what it's talking about. The angels appeared in the sky to the shepherds, and they said what? Don't be afraid. But then what did they say after that? They said, good news! Unto you this day has been born, right? The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. We're talking about Jesus being born. The angels give them specific information. They say, you will go to Bethlehem. You will find this place. And then you will find this child. And that is the King of Kings. So, flash forward a little bit more to all the way to the end. The shepherds went back to their flocks, glorifying and praising God for what they had heard and what they had just seen, and did just as the angel had told them. All right, so this day, Jesus is born. Where was Jesus born at? Everybody knows this. Bethlehem. What was the conditions of his birth? Born in a stable, a manger, right? Anybody know what a manger is? Come on, Kathy, you know what a manger is? More or less, something that we feed animals out of, right? It's not really a crib. Certainly wasn't designed for comfort for a child. One of the biggest takeaways that I took from this lesson, aside from the example of our good Father bringing us and sending us salvation, was the humility of our God. Now, if you really think about it, you're talking about the Creator of everything. Every table, every chair, every comfort you enjoy, God had at his fingertips with a thought, with a word. And yet, he chose for his human form to be treated in this way. Why? Creed. He came for everyone. Had he came as a glorified, exalted king, just pouring gold out of his fingertips, what would have been his reception? How different would it have been? Completely different. Number one, how easy is it to get somebody to believe what you say and not use faith when you come in on a golden horse? Or you come in blowing fire at people, right? People are much, much more likely to listen to you if you've got tons of money backing up what you say. Matter of fact, what was the nation of Israel looking for in this king, this Messiah? A conquering hero, a warrior, king like David. Somebody to come in, smite the Romans and kick them out of Israel and then give them back the promised land. That's what they were looking for. But would they have actually listened to him? Let's look at some historical context. How many good kings versus bad kings did Israel have? If I remember my lessons correctly, it was like every other one, right? You'd have a good king, things would be good for a little while, blessings would pour out, and then people would start sinning again, and they would stop worshiping God and worshiping idols, and then all of a sudden, the next king takes over, and he just goes crazy with these horrible things. And then plague and desolation hit Israel again, and it was just like all the way through their history. The reason for that is because even when Israel had good kings that came in as the conquering heroes, they still chose sin. At some point, they still said, I'm tired of this, I'm going to kind of do my own thing. That piece of wood looks like it's my God now. Now, when you say that out loud, does anybody else think that's absolutely ridiculous? A piece of wood? Oh, that's an idol. I'm going to worship that thing. Makes no sense to me. But that's me. That's a personal side note. Sure. I can make a piece of wood, right? I can carve it into anything I want it to be. Why is that all of a sudden got some kind of power? I don't know. It's just crazy. People do crazy things.
You can cut a piece of wood, but you can't make it.
I mean, I can grow a tree. But no, anyway, so my point here is people wouldn't have received him forever the way they needed to. And the truth of it is, had he came in on a white stallion with a flaming sword, there would have been terrified masses that would have flocked to him because they were scared, not because they what? Loved. Fear is not what God came here to give us. It's not what Jesus was here to give us. He came to give us love and salvation from our sinful natures. And he couldn't do that if he had came in any other way. So, what does this teach us about the example that we should follow? Because in a truth, I struggle with humility sometimes. What about you guys?
I think we all do.
And if you don't say that you do, you're lying to God and me and everyone in this room. The truth of the matter is, I hate, and my wife will probably text me in a minute and be shocked that I admitted this, but I hate to be wrong. Holy moly. Yeah, well, I hate being wrong. My buddy over here, Matt, we play a video game together, and I will make a mistake, but I will argue that mistake for an hour and be like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. I know I did the thing. And he's like, no, you didn't, dude. You couldn't have. It's not possible. I'm like, yes, I did. And then like an hour later, I'll watch the video and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I did. But I hate being wrong. I know everyone else hates being wrong. Some of the best things that have ever came into my life, but some of the best blessings that I've ever had came as a result of me humbling myself before the cause. When I finally admitted my fault, my wrongdoing, I'm sorry, it's my bad. Good things started happening. And you know why that is? Because Jesus came to teach us that lesson. The more humble you are, the more you can gain. Why is that? Because the meek will inherit. That's what he teaches us. He came in a humblest state that you possibly could. He was in a barn, born on the first day of his arrival. He didn't come in riding on a white horse through the clouds like he could have in a majestic and spectacular presentation. And it would be for value, that too.
He's got to.
We're going to come to the prophecy if I can make it there in time. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously things that we were trying to achieve here, but the fact of the matter is the prophets could have said something different had God directed them to. He chose the humble nature. He chose to come into this world and set that example. It was a God decision. It was a preordained, pre-thought through idea because he knows our nature and he knows what will best appeal to us and he knows how to best change us. Because that's what has to happen. It's not your nature to say I'm wrong. It's not your nature to be humble, to humble yourself before others. We have a group on a mission trip right now, and you've been on many mission trips. Is it a humbling experience to be in a third world country? You better believe it is. I tell some of my guys at work the other day, because I was talking to them about these mission trips that we went on, and I said, listen, if you've never been to a third world country, you have no appreciation for what you enjoy every day of your life. I was telling my kids the other day, we buy water at a grocery store. Do you know how crazy that is? When you go to a third world country, at best they can do is a creek or a hand-dug well. And that water's filthy. But that's the best they can do for the most basic, life-necessary sustenance, water. And you and I can walk out this door right here, I can see them on the tables now, and get a bottle of water that you bought at a store that the church provided to you. So, I know we all know these things. We all know how humbling an experience it is. How many people could or would go on a mission trip, though? Who wants to be reminded of that? None of us. That's the truth. You have to humble yourself to even go on one of these trips. That's a fact. And it's not for everybody, don't get me wrong. Not everybody is called to be a missionary. There are only a few of us that are actually specifically called into that ministry, but if that's what you feel, then you should obey it. You should humble yourself to obey it, because that is the example we were given. Jesus came in here and he was born in a manger, and through all of these things that he endured throughout his ministry and life, the most humbling one of them all was where he was started. His start in a barn around a bunch of livestock. You don't get much lower than that. I kind of want to talk a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit about prophecies. Hang on, I'm on the wrong one, there it goes. J. Barton Payne found 574 verses in the Old Testament talking about the Messiah, and well over 300 of those were fulfilled in the first few months of Jesus' ministry, including his birth. Talk about prophecies. Why was it important that Jesus fulfill prophecies? Anybody? Anybody? So that people would believe. Because what did we just discuss? He didn't ride in on a white horse with a flaming sword this time, right? He will second time, but not this time. So because he didn't come in the way that they expected, he had to fulfill the prophecies that people knew about. Like he was talking about before, the being born of a virgin, being born in a manger. All of the things that lined up. Like I said, there was well over 300. I'm not going to go through all 300 of them. We will touch base on a few of them. I will give you the scripture references for several of them. But the most important piece here is that he fulfilled these prophecies to help instill faith and belief in his message. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult, right? For Jesus to convince people of who he was that he says he was, right? So, aside from doing the miracles, aside from fulfilling prophecies, Jesus had a message to give to us. And I love to hear people talk about this because I feel like it gets lost in the sauce of the Christianity and all of the denominational jargon, and we kind of talk about all of the extra acts and extra things in the Bible and